The sun has gone down at Hangman's Hill, and the ghost at Misery Corner isn't walking tonight. So, welcome to the Weird Tales radio show, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, magic, and folklore. And now, here's your host, writer, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and sometime werewolf hunter, Charles Christian.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Charles Christian and with me is Janie, and we're here to make another foray into the world of ghosts, geeks, urban myths, magic and folklore.
Let me introduce another spectre. And if the stone tape theory of residual hauntings is correct, we've still got another 400 years before this ghost fades away. We're talking Haworth, which is it's in the heart of Bronte country in West Yorkshire. But it's not a Bronte-related haunting that we're going to talk about. Instead, it's the ghost of Lily Cove, who is said to be seen every 11th of June returning to the old White Lion Hotel in Main Street, which is where she had been staying on the day that she died.
So who is Lily Cove and how did she die?
I'm glad you asked me, because I was going to tell you anyway. It's nice you're paying attention. Well, this is where it gets interesting, because Lily, who was just 21 when she died in 1906, was what is known as a lady aeronaut. So, yeah. This involved, I think you will recall seeing this, maybe pictures of
I'm not
this.
that old.
Oh, no. Of course not. This involved actually sitting on a trapeze-like swing suspended beneath a gas balloon, floating up in the sky and then jumping off, returning to Earth on a parachute. Mm-hmm. So what could possibly go wrong with that, you wonder? Apparently it was a major source of entertainment in those early days of aviation, and the public were willing to pay good money to see a young girl, or young woman, theatrically whip off her skirts, revealing her bloomers and her tights, before flying up into the sky and then floating back again, risking possible injury and death in the process.
So was it dangerous?
Very much so, yes. Apparently at least 4 other lady aeronauts were killed in ballooning accidents during the period. And sadly, Lily was to join their number. Mm-hmm. And what seems to have happened is the wind caught the balloon and swept it upwards towards the nearby pond and reservoir. At the subsequent inquest, it was said Lily was frightened of water, which probably meant that she couldn't swim and therefore didn't want to risk landing in the reservoir and being caught up in her parachute. She could understand.
Which, understandable, yes.
Yeah. So, therefore, apparently she wriggled out of the parachute harness as the balloon approached the reservoir, but she hung onto the parachute rigging. The technical term of those is the risers. Presumably so she could let go before the parachute hit the water and then she wouldn't get all tangled up in it. Unfortunately, when she pulled the ripcord to open the parachute, the upward thrust was too strong for her to keep hanging onto the risers. So it was torn from her hands and she plummeted downwards, coming down head first. And she fell like a cartwheel, turning over once or twice, to quote a witness at the inquest, and landed in a field about 50 yards short of the reservoir. So, obviously, not good. The rescue team soon found her, and thinking she might still be alive, one of them gathered her dying body into his arms, saying, "My good woman, if you can speak, do." But though Lily's eyes were open, there was no answer, and she died immediately from multiple fractures and internal injuries. Yeah, so Lily's body was then returned to the White Lion Hotel, laid out in the room she'd been staying in, which was room 7.
And now her ghost visits the hotel each year on the anniversary of her death.
That is correct, yes. So just watch out for that. Room 7, guys.
Forget it.
Don't go there.
Not in July.
You are listening to the Weird Tales Radio Show with Charles Christian on internet radio and podcast.
I'm talking now to Darren Charles, one of the organisers and speakers at the upcoming folk horror revival event, Witch Cults, which takes place in Newcastle-upon-Tyne, that is, on Saturday the 14th of July. So Darren, you and the folk horror revival group have got a new event coming up.
Witch Cults is an idea that we've had sort of brewing for quite a while. I'm sure you've heard of our previous events that we've done, sort of dotted around the country. The first one was Otherworldly in London at the British Museum. We had an event in Edinburgh, at Summer Hall.
Yeah.
Called the Unseelie Court.
Yeah.
We had an event in Wakefield called Waking the Fields, believe it or not, at the Hepworth. We also had one in Whitby called Winter Ghosts.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, those previous events have all been quite diverse topics, ranging from a general sort of folk horror topic to psychogeography to all kinds of stuff. And we've always kind of wanted to sort of do something that kind of focuses in a little bit on perhaps one topic. Mm-hmm. So the idea with Witch Cults is to do just that, to kind of focus in on one specific topic, and make a sort of whole day event out of it. So it's a little bit new for us, a little bit different for us, to not have that diversity around the topic. But we think we'll get a much more interesting sort of day out of it, from having it focused in on witchcraft. So that's the whole idea behind the Witch Cults event.
Yeah.
So we beyond that, we've got some great stuff lined up for everybody as well. Would you like me to start talking about that?
Yes, indeed.
Or
yeah.
Well, I'll start with the I'll give a sort of brief overview of how the day will run.
Yeah.
We're starting at 12 o'clock. It's taking place at a place called the Star and Shadow Cinema in Newcastle.
Right.
And the day starts at 12 o'clock. And we've actually got the Star and Shadow is essentially it's a cinema, but they have other rooms available to us. So we're going to have two rooms open at the same time, running alongside each other. In one, we're going to have, during the afternoon, it's going to be talks and a little bit of music at the end of the afternoon. And then when we return for the evening session, that will be a play followed by music for the rest of the evening. In the other room, which is the cinema room, we have a sort of program of films that lasts around about 5 hours. We're going to screen that through the afternoon and then once again through the evening. So people have a chance to kind of dip into a bit of music, a bit of film, a bit of everything, really, we hope.
Brilliant. What speakers have you got lined up?
Well, first off, we've got Diane Purkis lined up, who's going to come and give a fabulous new talk. The title of her talk for Witch Cults is "Who's Scary Now? Scottish Witches in the Realm of the Dead."
Mm-hmm.
So, really looking forward to that. Diane's books, as I'm sure you're aware, among the more interesting and among the more learned within the sphere of early modern witchcraft and such like.
Sorry, for people who aren't familiar with her, she's an academic, isn't she?
She is, yes, from Oxford University.
Right.
She works within the English literature department. But I think it's her love of literature that has kind of drawn her into the interest in witchcraft, and she also has quite an interest in fairy lore and such like.
Yeah.
But she released a book some years ago now called a book called The Witch in History.
Yeah.
And it's a tremendous piece of work, looking at taking sort of as its central point is issues of gender, and a really important piece of work. I think speaks for itself in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to have her on board. So beyond that, we've got Gail Nina Anderson, who is also an academic. She's an art historian from the local area. She's from the Newcastle area. She'll be giving us a talk called Hecate or the Horned Man. Was there a god of the witches?
Right.
Which I'm really excited about.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great title.
It is, and it's one of those that a lot of people get quite upset about or hot about, whether it was a goddess or a god that was the primary deity.
Yeah. And that trundles on and on and on, that argument, I think. We don't want to get into that one.
No.
But I was going to say Gail Nina is a very, very good speaker. We saw quite recently giving a talk on perceptions of the witch in art.
Yeah.
And she is very, very good. So looking forward to seeing her. I'll be talking as well. I'll be discussing the historical accuracy or lack thereof in cinematic adaptations of early modern witch trials. So I'll be looking at films like Witchfinder General, Mark of the Devil, Witch Hammer, things like that, and just kind of drawing out what really did happen, whether they have anything really to say, whether they have any, how factual these films are.
Yeah.
So that'll be what I'll be doing. We're also got a poet called Bob Beagrie. He'll be joining us to read sections from his epic poem, The Seer Sung Husband. Now Bob is really good, and he's from Teesside, and he does a lot of stuff in sort of ancient regional dialect. At our Winter Ghosts event in Whitby, and at the British Museum event as well, Bob and his backing group came and did something called Lisung Spell, which is a great sort of epic poem that Bob has written, and it's all performed in ancient regional dialect. And to see it is quite wonderful. And it's really fascinating because you sit down to watch it and you think, I can't understand a word he's saying. The more you watch it, the more your ear starts to pick up on things. And you start to say, oh, well, actually, no, I do understand that. I do understand what he's saying. And by the time you get to the end of it, you're almost you feel as though you're almost fluent in that dialect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes.
So he is very, very good. So looking forward to seeing him. So that's our talks.
Yeah.
As I say, I also mentioned we have a play.
Yes.
The play is called Witch, and it's performed by the Circle of Spears Theatre Group. And it's written by a lady called Tracy Norman. The play itself is about a witch trial, and it's based on real evidence. Tracy used evidence from real documented cases to build up her play. To kind of the idea is that she gives a a fairly accurate interpretation of a witch trial. So they've done really well with it. It's played around the South quite a lot over the last sort of year or two. It's been back and forward several times to the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Boscastle as well. So all the reviews I've seen have been excellent, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that one as well.
Excellent. And what sort of movies have you got on?
We've got, well, as you can probably imagine, this has all been quite serious.
Yes.
This all seems quite serious and quite. So to lighten things up a little bit, we've got Simon King of the Witches.
Right.
The old American sort of psychedelic freak out movie. Drugs, parties, satanic rituals, and all kinds of lysergic madness and mayhem. Yeah, it's a fun, camp, kitschy, early 1970s movie. Very exploitation-ish. It's a lot of fun, and I think people will have a lot of fun watching that one. We also have the Italian print of a documentary film called Witchcraft 70. Now the Italian print features extra footage that's not available in the version that we have that was released in this country. It features a number of important sort of figures from that period. It's quite exploitative, but still of interest, because you do get interviews with the likes of Alex and Maxine Sanders and Anton LaVey and people like that. So while it's still quite exploitative, it's still got its merits, I think.
Yeah.
And it's certainly an interesting period piece.
Yes.
The rest of our film program is made up from modern short films. We get approached by so many different filmmakers with short films that we decided we would really like to sort of bring some in for this program. There were so many others that we would have liked to screen at some point as well. I mean, we've tried to keep these ones down to sort of witchcraft theme.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff that we could use in future events. So anybody that's come to us and said, "Oh, here's my film," we may be in touch with you over a future event. But for this one, we've stuck with a witchcrafty theme. So first off, we've got two shorts from one of our own admins, Gary Parsons. The first one is called Thelema, and I'm assuming by the name, most people will gather that it's based on the writings of Aleister Crowley.
Yes.
Interesting fact about this short film is that it was actually a lot of the scenes were actually filmed in the Abbey of Thelema in Sicily, and Gary had spent some time out there and shot a load of footage for the film. And he has some absolutely wonderful stories. We're not sure if Gary will be able to join us on the day, but if he can, I would love him to be able to sort of tell people the stories that he has, because there are some quite strange little stories he has about his time in Sicily, with regards to the house. Very good film. We also have another film from Gary called Conjuration, which is based around an Alexandrian ritual. That one was also filmed in some fairly wonderful magical places. He filmed sequences in Pompeii, Avebury, Stonehenge, and that again it's a slightly longer film. And as I say, it follows an Alexandrian ritual, and that's also really very good. And it even has a little bit of Hair in the Moon on the soundtrack for those who like a bit of the Hair in the Moon. Gives it a little bit more of a folk horror twist there as well. Got two more shorts to mention as well. The first is a film directed by a guy called Tom Lee Rutter. It's called Bella in the Witch Elm, which has been playing around quite a bit recently.
There's been quite a bit of coverage on that story again in 40 and Times and other places recently. I don't know whether it's an anniversary or something coming up of the original body being found or something.
But it's a very good film. Beautifully shot. It's all done on a minuscule budget, but you would never imagine so. It's an excellent piece of film and really, really beautifully crafted. And our final short comes from it's actually directed by two women. It's directed by Scarlett Amaris and Melissa St. Hilaire. It's called American Witch. Now, the version we're screening is a 10-minute film. It's basically it's kind of an exploration of the stories of practitioners in America and how witchcraft has changed their lives for the better or for the worse. So that looks like being a really fascinating piece. The short that we have is absolutely beautiful. It's excellent. Yeah.
What's the admission price?
The admission price is we've got two available tickets basically. We have an all-day ticket which includes everything, and we have an evening-only ticket which just it just runs from 7 p.m. onwards. Yeah. So the event prices are, for the evening ticket, it is £16.76. And for the all-day ticket, it is £27.54.
Right. And people can find this on the folkhorrorrevival.com website, and if you're on Facebook, on the Folk Horror Revival group, there's plenty of links to it there.
You can also find it at starandshadow.org.uk as well.
And what sort of numbers are you expecting?
We're not entirely sure.
well, put it the other way around. What's the maximum the venue can hold?
It's somewhere around about 300 in total.
Right.
Everybody who comes has a great day out, and it's just a really, really, really sort of great atmosphere. Very, very productive sort of atmosphere. Very friendly. The more the merrier, I say.
That's excellent. Right. Anything else you want to tell people about the event?
Yeah, just to the one thing we haven't touched upon was the music.
Oh right, yes.
Because we do have several musical performers who are, I guess they're part of the quite a central part of the event. So first off, we've got Black Mountain Transmitter, which is a sort of Lovecraftian musical project of a man called James Moore. Yeah. Last time they played in Newcastle, or last time he played in Newcastle, was part of an event I'd organised about 5 years ago, and he went down in an absolute storm. It's an electronics-based set, very, very atmospheric, very spooky, very creepy, but absolutely riveting, and you really can't take your eyes off the visuals that James creates, because James is also, as well as a musician, he's an artist, so his visuals are usually pretty fantastic as well. So as well as James, we have the Heartwood Institute, again another electronic project, whose recent album was called Secret Rites. And the album Secret Rites uses a lot of samples and a lot of imagery from films like Secret Rites, Witchcraft 70, which we're screening. It seemed like a bit of a no-brainer to bring them in for this one.
Yeah.
The album is very much 70s style electronica, with samples and layered over, just to kind of give it that 70s vibe. It's fantastic. I described it to someone else as a suitably witchy soundtrack to our event, and I think it's spot on, that description.
Brilliant.
We also have a lady called Natalie Stern, originally from Sweden, who's now based in Newcastle, and she does again a Lovecraftian set, but it's kind of strange, folky electronics and vocal loops. There's nothing quite like what Natalie does. Never heard anybody else do anything quite like it. It is very, very unique and is very, very good. Highly recommended. Another performer, we have the folk singer Georgia Seddon, who's the daughter of incredible string bands Mike Heron.
Oh, right. Yep.
And she's going to be doing a solo set for us. She's a classically trained pianist, and very much looking forward to seeing her perform. She came to our Edinburgh event. We met her because her dad was one of our speakers. We also have a Teesside based band called Peg Powler, rather appropriately named after a water witch from Teesside folklore. She's a Grindylow who is said to grab children and wayward young men who stray too close to the bubbling river's edges and devours them in her watery den, known as Hell's Kettles. I don't think there's anything more to say to that one, is there really?
No, guess Matt, I'd pay good money to see that, yes.
Yeah. And then we also have a project called Hokano, which is a solo project of Andy Hokano from the Psychogeographical Commission and Choniad. And Andy's performing a set based on an album he's working on at the moment called Witch Pricker, which is based loosely on the 1650 Newcastle witch trials. He's done loads of sort of field recordings around the city to tie in with this, and very much looking forward to seeing that as well, as that sort of, part of that topic is a part of my interest. We also have a gentleman called Marcus H. Now his stuff is again more electronic stuff again, but a little different, more ambient, a sort of stark, creepy sort of ambient music. His stuff, he's been on Radio 3 and 6 Music among others, so he's got a good pedigree. I'd not heard of him before till he sent me some music across. I said, we've got to have this guy. It's great. It's perfect for the event. And I was also chatting to him, and he rather interestingly is some of his family have traced lineage back to the Pendle witch trials.
Oh, right.
Which just makes it even more perfect, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, particularly as you're going to have a play that's on witch trials as well.
Yeah.
That sounds excellent. Right. So I think the message there is, although you're being a little bit on the cautious side, 300 isn't that many. It's not like you're playing Wembley Stadium or something. So it's a case of
no, absolutely not.
You need to be booking sooner rather than later if you don't want to be disappointed on this one.
Yes, I think so.
Well, that's been excellent. Thank you very much, Darren, and best of luck with the event.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye now. In his interview, Darren Charles mentioned that one of the acts playing at the Witch Cult event was the Heartwood Institute. And here they are with the track Havin Letir from the compilation album Audio Albium, which was released a few weeks ago at the end of May. Almost time for us to go, but before we do, let's end on a geek note, as I know that if you, like me, have an interest in the paranormal, it frequently overlaps with a fascination for all things geeky. Now for one of those what-if moments in history where we were so close to a major world-shaking and world-reshaping change, but it just didn't happen. In June 1822, the English inventor, philosopher, mathematician and general-purpose polymath Charles Babbage wrote a paper for the Royal Astronomical Society called Notes on the Application of Machinery to the Computation of Astronomical and Mathematical Tables. This may sound dull as ditch water, but significantly it included a proposal for the creation of a difference engine, in effect, a mechanical computer. And it gets better, because Babbage went on to design a difference engine, and some work was actually carried out on manufacturing and assembling such a machine. Unfortunately, Babbage kept tweaking the final design. There were disputes over intellectual property rights between Babbage and the company building it, and eventually the money ran out without it ever being completed. Now, and this is where it gets interesting, because in 1991, to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the birth of Babbage, the Science Museum in London constructed a complete difference engine from Babbage's original plans, and although it was built only to the machining tolerances available in the mid-19th century, it actually worked. Now, this thing is a beast. It is powered by a series of manually cranked handles, although apparently Babbage also planned a steam-powered version. It weighs several tons and stands about 10 feet tall. There were no plans for a portable version. However, along with being a steampunk wet dream, all brass cogwheels and goggles, there is a serious side to this, because if Babbage's original difference engine had ever been completed during his lifetime, what we now see as the computing revolution and information age could have started about 100 years earlier than it actually did, in the mid-19th century rather than the mid-20th. That said, if it had, then all the problems with spam, hackers, online trolls, fake news and data privacy would have also started a century earlier, so maybe not such a good idea after all. Janie and I look forward to joining you again next time. Till then, good night. Don't be fright of ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night.
Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia, is baying at the moon, which means it's time for us to go. You've been listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, magic and folklore. Keep in touch with us online at www.urbanfantasist.com or by email at urbanfantasist.icloud.com or on Twitter at Christian Uncut. Good night. Join us again next week for another edition of the Weird Tales radio show.